On my 13th birthday, my parents brought home a daughter they had adopted from outside. She was the child of my parents' deceased friend, Dad said. She has no father or mother, which is very pitiful. From now on, you two must get along peacefully, my mom said. You're the older sister, you have to be nice to her. My older brother said, if you dare to bully her, I'll beat you up. I nodded and pulled out 6 orphans from behind me. They lost their parents at such a young age. How pitiful. Let's adopt them together. 1. Before the age of 13, I was the most pampered little princess in the family, but ever since my 13th birthday, when my parents brought home a little sister from outside, I became the least favored one in the family. My parents and older brother only knew how to revolve around her, leaving me aside, all because she has a heart condition. She lost her parents at a young age, and is very pitiful, so whenever she clutched her chest and her eyes turned red, it all became my fault, just because I was older than her, because I was the older sister, I had to give in to her. I don't know how many times it was when Xiao Weiwei was hospitalized after another heart attack, I just grabbed her hand and warned her not to keep pretending. My brother got angry and pushed me down the stairs. Mom and Dad anxiously carried her to see a doctor, not even sparing me a glance. In the hospital room, they held her and said it was lucky she was all right, acting like a loving family. While I lay in the cold stairwell and died from excessive blood loss, given a second chance, I decided to fulfill their wish, and send them 7 adopted sons and daughters. Anyway, raising 1 adopted daughter is the same as raising 7 adopted sons and daughters. Mom and Dad heard my words and looked at the 6 orphans I had dragged out. For a moment, they were so overjoyed they couldn't even speak. 2. After a long pause, Dad finally managed to speak with difficulty. 1. Whose children did you bring back? Hurry and take them back. Their parents will be worried if they can't find them. I glanced at Xiao Weiwei, whose face was deathly pale, and said quietly, they're just like Xiao Weiwei. They're orphans with no parents. They're so pitiful. Let's adopt them too. Dad looked troubled and turned to my mom for help. My mom pressed her lips together, stroking my head and speaking softly. 1. Raising children isn't like raising chickens or ducks. Our family can't raise so many kids. I was puzzled. Why not? You all adopted Xiao Weiwei, so why can't you adopt them too? My mom explained. Weiwei is different from them. Weiwei has heart disease. If we don't adopt her, she will die. With my innocent, round eyes, I looked at my mother and said, but they're sick too. Yuan and Wigwa have leukemia, Zhuang and Longlon have meningitis, and Xiaoduzi and Xiaoputeo, just like Weiwei. All have heart conditions. If you don't adopt them, they'll die too. My mother was also at a loss. She rubbed her temples, unsure how to explain it to me at that moment. Beside us, Xiao Weiwei tugged at my mother's clothes and timidly spoke up. Auntie, it's okay. If my sister doesn't like me, I can go to the orphanage. Hearing Xiao Weiwei say this and seeing her pale little face, my mother's heart instantly softened beyond words. She squatted down and held Xiao Weiwei in her arms. Weiwei, be good. How could an older sister not like you when you're this adorable? Are you tired, Weiwei? Come on, mommy will take you back to your room to rest. As she spoke, my mom carried Weiwei away. My brother Xiao Wenshuan glanced at me and followed them. In my previous life, it was always like this. Whenever Xiao Weiwei's eyes turned red, I was bound to lose, even though I had long known it would be like this. Seeing my mother hold Xiao Weiwei and leave without looking back still made my heart ache. Perhaps the desolation in my eyes was too obvious. My father looked at my desolate expression, sighed, couldn't help but comfort me a couple of times, and then followed them out. 1. Be good. Even though mom and dad have Weiwei now, you are still the one we love the most. We're a bit tired from picking up Weiwei today, so please be obedient and don't throw a tantrum anymore. Okay, I've never doubted my parents' doting love for me. After all, I've indeed been spoiled by them over the past 6 years. But compared to Xiao Weiwei, this amount of spoiling seems somewhat laughable. Otherwise, they wouldn't have forgotten it's my birthday today. 3. The room prepared for Weiwei is right next door to mine. I was sitting on the bed, able to hear the sounds of laughter and joy coming from the next room. In my previous life, I listened to the laughter and joy from next door, feeling so sad that I cried under the covers until I was out of breath. In this life, I will never cry again. Just at that moment, Yuan suddenly burst into tears. An unpleasant, sour smell followed. Immediately, with Yuan's cry, the other children started wailing one after another. I quickly carried Yuan to the next room and shoved her into mom's arms. Mom, Dad, it's bad. Yuan pooped. What should I do? I don't know how to handle it. Mom, please take care of her quickly. Then I pulled brother and dad back into the room, stuffing 2 children into each of our arms. Quick, quick. Brother and dad hurriedly caught them, instinctively cradling the 2 children and swaying them from Side to side, I was raised being held by them, so both of them know how to hold babies. It's just that they haven't held such tiny infants in so many years. Feeling a bit rusty, neither of them was very skilled at it, so I held the last child and stepped forward to correct them one by one. Dad, you can't hold him like that, you have to hold him like this. This hand supports his head, and this hand supports his bottom, and you, older brother, don't sway like that, you're swaying too fast, you'll hurt them. Do it like this, gently, gradually. They regained their rhythm and became adept at holding and soothing the children. The 4 children gradually quieted their cries in their arms, stared at them blankly for a moment, and then revealed a soft, sweet smile. The 2 were overjoyed. They're smiling, mine is smiling too, mine is smiling too. At the door, my mother walked in holding Yuen, who had just been changed into a fresh diaper. I could hear you too from far away. What's got you so excited? My brother handed over the 2 children in his arms. Mom, look how cute they are laughing. My dad also held the children and leaned in. Honey, look at these 2, see these big eyes? Don't they look like when she was little? Definitely a mischievous one. This one of mine is the real troublemaker, just peed all over me. The 3 of them kept talking non-stop about the children's appearances and personalities. I glanced at Xiao Weiwei standing at the doorway with a contorted expression and raised my eyebrows challengingly. Before Xiao Weiwei could open her mouth, I quickly tossed the little grape in my arms upward and shouted. It flew away, drowning out her voice. The little grape giggled nonstop. Seeing that no one paid attention to her, Xiao Weiwei could only return to her room with red eyes, for, in the evening, Xiao Weiwei packed her things and prepared to leave. She was spotted by the family's nanny, who stopped her. Miss Weiwei, where are you going with your luggage? Xiao Weiwei clutched her chest, struggling to breathe as she spoke. I'm going back to the orphanage. That's where I belong. Master, madam, come quickly. Miss Weiwei seems to be having a medical episode. Mom and Dad hurriedly ran out. Weiwei, what's wrong? Don't be afraid. We'll take you to the hospital right away. At the same time, I also ran out of the room crying, holding Xiaoduzi and Xiaoputeo. Mom, Dad, Xiaoduzi and Xiaoputeo won't stop crying. What should we do? Can you take them to the hospital to have a look? As I spoke, I shoved the 2 children into my parents' arms and pulled them toward the exit. When I walked out the gate, I turned back again to look at my brother, who was supporting Xiao Weiwei at the side. Brother, Zhuangzhuang and Longlong are still asleep in the room. Please help me take care of them for one night. I'm going to the hospital with Mom and Dad to have Little Bean and Little Grape checked out, and we'll be back very soon. My brother nodded instinctively, then suddenly remembered Xiao Weiwei beside him. Weiwei is sick too. I still have to take care of Weiwei. I pulled Xiao Weiwei over and said, I can take care of Weiwei here. Just stay at home and take good care of Little Grape and the others for me. After that, I didn't give Xiao Wenxuan any chance to object. I took Xiao Weiwei by the hand and got into the car. When we got to the hospital, Mom and Dad each carried 1 child into the emergency room, clearly forgetting about Xiao Weiwei. Their adopted daughter, Xiao Weiwei, did indeed have a heart condition, and this time she was truly upset. The attack was triggered, and she passed out. After Mom and Dad finished taking Xiaoduzi and Xiaoputeo for their checkups, they finally remembered there was still one more person. Xiao Weiwei, Mom and Dad, don't worry, I'm taking care of Weiwei here. The doctor said she's fine, and once she wakes up, she can go home. Mom patted my head with a look of relief. Wenwen is so sensible. Dad also looked at me approvingly. Our Wenwen has grown up. She even knows how to help Mom and Dad share the burden. Just then, Xiao Weiwei woke up. Her mother asked her gently, Weiwei, how are you feeling? Is there anywhere that still feels uncomfortable? 5. Xiao Weiwei only shook her head with red-rimmed eyes, saying nothing. Her mother asked a few more questions, but Xiao Weiwei still said nothing. Mom sighed, rubbed her temples a little wearily, and didn't know how to coax her anymore. Dad, seeing this, followed up with a few comforting words, but when he saw that she still had her head down and wasn't speaking, he also didn't know what to do. I glanced at Xiao Weiwei and said, younger sister Weiwei probably doesn't like the hospital and wants to go home to rest. Mom and Dad, you stay here to look after Doubao and Xiaoputeo, and I'll take her home. Fine. After completing Xiao Weiwei's discharge procedures, Mom said gently to Xiao Weiwei, go back with your sister first. Tomorrow we'll take you to the amusement park. Okay. At that moment, a nurse walked in from outside and said that Xiaoduzi and Xiaoputao were in critical condition and needed immediate surgery. Mom and Dad didn't care what Xiao Weiwei's reaction was either, and hurriedly got up and followed the nurse. Only Xiao Weiwei was left standing there, looking forlorn. In my previous life, I was the same, able only to watch forlornly as Mom, Dad, and my brother carried Xiao Weiwei away, not even glancing at me once. From day to night, and then from night to day, they stayed in the hospital with Xiao Weiwei the whole time, leaving me alone in that huge villa. In this life, It should be Xiao Weiwei's turn to taste what it feels like to be abandoned. On the way home with Xiao Weiwei didn't say a word. It wasn't until a few days later, when Dad and Mom came back from the hospital with Little Grape and Little Bean, looking exhausted and preparing to go back to their rooms to rest, Xiao Weiwei suddenly tugged at her mother's sleeve, wanting her to stay and sleep with her. Her mother couldn't bear to refuse and agreed, worried that Xiao Weiwei might pull some tricks. I also carried Yuan over and asked Mom to take him along to sleep too, but the next morning at breakfast, no one knew exactly what method Xiao Weiwei had used. Mom actually suggested again that Yuan and the others should all be sent back to the orphanage. 6. I glanced at Xiao Weiwei, and Xiao Weiwei looked at me with a provocative smile. I knew that Xiao Weiwei had also been reborn. I tightened my grip on the chopsticks in my hand and looked at Mom. Why, our family isn't unable to support them, so why do we have to send them away? Mom said, this isn't about whether we can afford to raise them. Your dad and I have limited time and energy, and we can't possibly take care of so many people, let alone take good care of them. Sending them back to the orphanage is best for them, because there are people there whose job is to look after them. I pointed at Xiao Weiwei. Then what about her? Will you send her back to the orphanage too? Mom shook her head. Of course not. Weiwei is our adopted daughter, so of course she'll stay at home. Dad also said, it's settled then. I've already called the orphanage. They'll come to take Yuan and the others back later. I know there's no turning back on this matter, and if I keep insisting, I'll only make Mom and Dad unhappy, so I have no choice but to find another way. Xiao Weiwei, you don't actually think that after sending Yuan and the others away, you'll be able to monopolize Mom and Dad's affection like you did in the previous life, right? I sneered inwardly, but my eyes suddenly welled up with tears, my voice choked with emotion. But Yuan and the others don't have parents, and they're sick. If we send them back to the orphanage, no one will treat them, and they'll die. I paused for a moment, sniffed, then looked at them and said, Mom, Dad, I don't want them to die. Can I use my pocket money to help them, to pay for their medical treatment? Mom was moved by me, her eyes also turning red. She gently wiped away my tears. This is doing a good deed. Of course you can. Our Wen is really becoming more and more understanding. If your pocket money isn't enough in the future, just tell us, and we'll give you more. Seeing Xiao Weiwei drop her chopsticks and try to clutch her chest again, about to collapse, I quickly reached out, grabbed her, and burst into tears. Mom and Dad, I knew you were the best, but I still really don't want them to leave. Dad patted my back to comfort me. All right, stop crying. If you miss them later, Mom and Dad can take you to see them anytime. After dinner, the orphanage staff arrived. Yuan and the others were taken away, and Mom and Dad were also preparing to fulfill their promise and take Xiao Weiwei to the amusement park. Before leaving, Xiao Weiwei turned back and looked at me. Aren't you coming, sister? I don't want to go. Mom and Dad also looked at me. Seeing that I wasn't in the mood, they thought I was upset because Yuan and the others had been taken away. They coaxed me for a bit more, but seeing that I still looked unhappy, they were at a loss again. Xiao Weiwei said understandingly, since sister is in a bad mood and doesn't want to go, then forget it. It's okay if I don't go to the amusement park today. Once again, this made Mom and Dad look at her with pity, so they said to me, Weiwei hasn't been to the amusement park in a long time. Today, Mom and Dad will take Weiwei to the amusement park first. You can rest at home. Okay, we'll bring you a gift when we come back. Then they took Xiao Weiwei to the amusement park. Xiao Weiwei sat proudly by the car window, flashing a triumphant smile at me. 7. I sneered coldly, then turned and went back to my room. In this life, I have no interest in my parents' doting affection, but I will never let Xiao Weiwei have an easy time either. Guessing it was time for them to arrive at the amusement park, I called my mom on video chat. As soon as the video connected, I saw my mom holding Xiao Weiwei appear on screen. In the frame, Xiao Weiwei leaned against her mom's chest, clutching a stuffed toy, smiling happily as she waved at me. I ignored her showing off and only spoke with a worried expression. Mom, the director of the orphanage called and said that Yuan and Guigua have been feeling unwell since they returned, crying non-stop and unable to be comforted no matter how they try. Could you take me to see them? Mom hesitated a bit, weighing the two options. She couldn't bear to make Xiao Weiwei sad after all, so she said she would have the family driver take me there, between me and Xiao Weiwei. In the end, she still chose Xiao Weiwei. I sneered inwardly, but the words I spoke came out with a heartbroken sob. Mom, I want you to accompany me to see it, just as a birthday present for my birthday this year. Can't I have that? Hearing me mention my birthday, Mom suddenly remembered that on my birthday, they had forgotten it because they were picking up Xiao Weiwei, and Mom looked at me with guilt. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Dad and I have been so busy lately that we actually forgot your birthday. It's okay. I can understand Mom and Dad. Weiwei is such a thoughtful sister. I believe she can understand Mom and Dad too, right? Weiwei, amusement parks can be visited anytime, but Yuan and the others are still so young and are all suffering from such serious illnesses. Sister Weiwei surely wouldn't bear to see them crying continuously from the pain, right? After seeing them this time, we don't know how many more chances we'll have to visit them in the future. Sister Weiwei is so understanding, she'll definitely comprehend my difficulties, won't she? Xiao Weiwei's face looked grim, yet she had no choice but to nod in agreement, pretending to be very sensible. Seeing Xiao Weiwei nod, my mom didn't think much further and said to me, "Then Wenwen, you stay home and wait for Mom and Dad, we'll come back soon to take you to the orphanage." Once again left behind by her parents, Xiao Weiwei's expression twisted horribly, yet in front of her parents, she dared not show any emotion, instead putting on a well-behaved and understanding demeanor where Mom and Dad couldn't see. She stopped me in my tracks. "Xiao Wenwen, having died once, your skills have really grown, haven't they? But don't get too proud. In my last life, I could make you lose so badly you were utterly defeated, and in this life, I can still make you die without a place to be buried. If you don't believe me, just wait and see." Soon, Xiao Weiwei's counterattack began. She was very clear about her own advantages. Heart disease was her most powerful weapon. When my parents accompanied me to the orphanage to visit Yuan and the others, Xiao Weiwei deliberately did extreme sports in her room, causing a heart attack and collapsing unconscious. Had my brother not returned from school and discovered her, rushing her to the hospital in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. My parents brought me from the orphanage to the hospital, and as soon as my brother approached, he slapped me across the face. "Xiao Wenwen, you have to know your limits when trying to win favor. You knew Weiwei has heart disease, yet you deliberately tricked Mom and Dad into leaving her alone in the villa. Do you realize that because of you, Weiwei almost died?" Mom and Dad had just started scolding their son. "Xiao Wenxuan, what are you doing? How could you hit your little sister?" But they were instead scolded by their son, Mom and Dad. "Xiao Wenwen's mischief is one thing, but how could you have no sense at all? You actually left Wenwen alone in the villa, at night like this. How scared she must have been. This time, if I hadn't returned early and rushed her to the hospital in time, you would never have seen her again when you came back." Mom and Dad felt extremely guilty, repeatedly apologizing to Xiao Weiwei and promising that from now on, they would never leave her alone again. Xiao Weiwei, her eyes red, threw herself into her parents' arms, saying nothing but sobbing uncontrollably. Her parents were even more heartbroken, watching the happy family of four hugging each other closely. I stood in the corner beside them, smiling sadly. Actually, Xiao Weiwei's methods aren't particularly clever, but no matter in my past life or this one, whenever Xiao Weiwei uses this trick, I always lose. Fortunately, in this life, I no longer have any expectations from them. Days passed like flowing water, and Xiao Weiwei soon replaced me, becoming the most favored person in the family. No matter my parents or my older brother, they all revolve around Xiao Weiwei alone, treating me as if I'm invisible, completely forgotten. Xiao Weiwei is so proud, always showing off to me in places where my parents and brother can't see, like how her parents took her to the zoo, how her brother gave her a kitten tomorrow, how her father bought her expensive jewelry, and how her mother bought her new clothes. I just laugh it off. She has no idea what I've asked my parents for in places she can't see. On Xiao Weiwei's birthday, while she was showing off the birthday gifts from her parents and brother to me, she suddenly clutched her chest and loudly accused me. "Sister, I never wanted to compete with you for anything. Why would you say such things about me?" My brother rushed over angrily and pushed me aside. "Xiao Wenwen, what are you doing? I warned you not to bully Weiwei again. How dare you still pick on her? Do you have a death wish?" I stumbled backward and fell down the stairs, just like in my previous life. Mom and Dad anxiously carried the ailing Xiao Weiwei to the hospital, without even sparing me a glance. I called 120 myself and took an ambulance to the hospital. My leg was broken, and the doctor arranged for me to be hospitalized. When Mom and Dad received the doctor's call asking them to come and sign for my hospitalization, I heard my brother's impatient voice on the other end of the line. "Xiao Wenwen, you'll do anything to compete with Weiwei for favor, won't you?" "What broken leg? I didn't even push her hard at all. I think she's just faking it." Mom scolded him sharply. "What nonsense are you talking? Wenwen is also your sister. How can you say that about your sister? Come with us to see her and apologize." My brother snorted coldly. "I'm not going. I'm staying here to watch over Weiwei. You can go by yourselves if you want." After Dad finished handling my hospitalization procedures, he explained on behalf of my brother, "Wenwen, don't blame your brother. He didn't mean it." I retorted loudly, "That's not true at all. He did it on purpose. He just wants me dead." In his eyes, there's only Xiao Weiwei, and he doesn't even see me as his sister. My mother chimed in as well. "Wenwen, how can you think of your brother that way? In his eyes, both you and Weiwei are his sisters." I turned my Head away. In his heart, only Xiao Weiwei is his sister. You're just like him, all biased towards Xiao Weiwei. In your hearts, only Xiao Weiwei is your daughter. My brother suddenly pushed the door open. So that's your reason for bullying Weiwei? I retorted loudly. I have never bullied her. My brother looked at me coldly. I saw it with my own eyes. And you still want to argue? My mother also said, Wenwen, Weiwei has a heart condition. You really shouldn't provoke her, my father chimed in. As well, yes, Wenwen, Weiwei really can't handle any stress at all. Can't you just get along with her? What if I say no? I spoke calmly. Wenwen, I interrupted my mother. What if I say that between her and me, you can only choose one? Would you choose her or me? Seeing my serious expression, Mom and Dad fell into a rare silence. Even my brother stopped talking. After a long while, Dad finally spoke up. Wenwen, Weiwei, I interrupted Dad. No need to say more. I know your choice. After I'm discharged from the hospital, transfer me to a boarding school. I'll live on campus from now on. This will be better for both me and Weiwei. I can never coexist peacefully with Weiwei in this lifetime. Hearing me say that, my parents had no choice but to reluctantly agree to make it up to me. My parents increased my monthly allowance several times over. After hearing the doctor say that I would never be able to stand up again, they worried that I wouldn't be able to manage on my own, and tried to persuade me to move back home, but I refused. My brother rarely apologized to me. I'm sorry, Wenwen, I didn't know I would hurt you so badly. I really didn't mean it at the time. Can you forgive me? No, I will never forgive you in this lifetime. My brother was furious and embarrassed. Suit yourself. I've spoiled you too much. I shouldn't have felt sorry for you in the first place. 10. In the second month of living on campus, I was exceptionally admitted to City No. 1 high school, and skipped a grade to senior year because I won first place in a competition. My parents were especially happy about this and doubled my allowance. Xiao Weiwei didn't want to be left behind and also acted coquettishly toward her parents, wanting to skip a grade. By the time we graduated from senior year, both Xiao Weiwei and I had done very well on our exams. My parents specially hosted a banquet for us. At the banquet, Xiao Weiwei specially prepared a video to thank her parents for all the efforts they've made for her over the years, but she had no idea that I had secretly replaced that video with another one. When the screen showed Xiao Weiwei standing proudly in front of me with her arms crossed, boasting to me how good my parents were to her, her expression instantly changed. My parents' and brother's expressions changed as well. They looked at Xiao Weiwei in disbelief, as if they couldn't believe that Xiao Weiwei, who had always seemed sensible and considerate in their eyes, could actually be this kind of person. Xiao Weiwei frantically tried to turn off the video. No, it's not like this. None of this is true. Where's the switch? Where is it? Turn it off. I command you, turn it off for me. Xiao Weiwei shouted furiously at the staff, who were at a loss, but Dad suddenly roared, Don't you dare turn it off. Xiao Weiwei clutched her chest and looked at her dad. Dad hesitated subconsciously, but after hearing my cold laugh, he instantly wiped the look of concern from his face. Mom couldn't take her eyes off the screen in front of her. Her eyes were red, her hand covering her mouth, yet she dared not let herself cry on the screen. I hadn't done anything, yet Xiao Weiwei grabbed my hand and threatened, Xiao Wenwen, Mom, Dad, and brother are all mine, and their affection is mine too. If you know what's good for you, leave on your own, otherwise, I'll make sure you end up just like in your past life, dead without a place to be buried. Suddenly, Xiao Weiwei's expression changed. Sister, I never wanted to compete with you for anything. Why would you say such things about me? As soon as Xiao Weiwei finished speaking, my furious brother rushed over and pushed me down the stairs. Brother's breath hitched slightly. He clenched his fists tightly, not daring to look at me, his eyes fixed unwaveringly on the screen as I struggled to drag my broken legs, crawling like a dead dog all the way to the living room, sweating profusely as I propped myself up to reach for the phone on the coffee table, dialed the emergency number with his last bit of strength. Disobedient son, look at what you've done. Dad, unable to bear it any longer, slapped his older brother across the face. The older brother fell to the ground, collapsing and clutching his head. I'm such a damn bastard. I deserve to die. 11. Xiao Weiwei reached out to grab her mother's hand. Mom, it's not like that. Let me explain. But her mother pushed her to the ground. Get out. Don't call me Mom. I'm not your mother. I really regret it. I shouldn't have adopted you in the first place. Xiao Weiwei covered her heart again, her face pale. Mom, my heart hurts so much. This time, neither her mother nor her father glanced at her again. Instead, they both looked at me with apologetic expressions. Wenwen, I'm sorry. Mom and Dad didn't know. If we had known she would treat you like that, we would never have adopted her. Can you forgive us? Yes, Wenwen. Mom and Dad know we were wrong. From now on, you'll be our only daughter, no one else Can you move back and live with us? We want to make it up to you properly. No need. I'm past the age where I need my parents' spoiling. I don't need your spoiling or compensation anymore. I gave them a cold look and turned away. Seeing this, Mom and Dad hurriedly chased after me, wanting to keep me from leaving. I declined. When I saw Xiao Wenxuan again, he was sitting in a wheelchair, noticing my curious gaze. He spoke with a bitter smile. It's really not easy to see you, seeing me like this. Now, Wenwen, do you feel a little happier? Just say it. What exactly do you want from me? I leaned back in my chair, not in the mood to chat with him. If it weren't for the fact that he kept bothering Yuan and the others whenever he couldn't see me, I would never have come to meet him. He pushed a stack of documents toward me. I glanced at them: share transfer agreements, real estate transfer papers, and some asset transfer contracts. Xiao Wenxuan looked at me and spoke slowly. After you left that day, Mom and Dad and I rushed after you, but we were hit by an out-of-control large truck. When I woke up, my legs were gone. During the subsequent treatment, I suffered multiple infections. I don't have many days left to live now. He paused, then glanced at me again. Seeing that I still didn't react, he continued with a bitter tone. During the time I was unconscious, I dreamed about my past life. Wenwen, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to do it back then. Xiao Wenxuan's eyes were slightly red, and the guilt on his face was almost overflowing. I lowered my gaze. It's meaningless to say these things now. Xiao Wenxuan smiled bitterly. I know you may not forgive me, and I don't expect your forgiveness. It's only right that you resent me. You might not know, but Mom, Dad, and I all had dreams about our previous lives. Dad's hair turned completely white overnight. He seemed to have lost his soul. Staying in your old room all day without saying a word. After Mom woke up, she went crazy immediately because she couldn't bear such a shock. Now she doesn't recognize anyone and spends her days hugging a doll, constantly muttering your name. Can you go back and see them? Xiao Wenxuan asked me cautiously. After remaining silent for a while, I still followed my inner thoughts and said, I don't have time. Xiao Wenxuan sighed and wanted to say something more, but after meeting my cold gaze, he ultimately stopped pressing further. I just hope I can take over the family company and property this time. I didn't refuse. As I turned to leave, Xiao Wenxuan suddenly called out to me, Wenwen, I'm already a dying man. Can I hear you call me brother one more time? I said. My brother died on my 13th birthday. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. The Smith family had only one male heir for 7 generations, and Charles Smith was frail and had difficulty conceiving. Lucas's father spent a fortune to marry me as his daughter-in-law, all because I was a rare fertility saint. After marriage, Charles Smith's health improved, and I became pregnant without any issues. Lucas's father was overjoyed and promised me 10% of the company's shares. On the night of the celebration banquet, Charles Smith, fueled by alcohol, kicked me in the stomach. Bitch. He spat with hatred in his eyes. If it weren't for your scheming, how could Susan have married the wrong man and been beaten to death? I lay in a pool of blood, my eyes wide with unseeing rage. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day Lucas's father came to ask for my hand in marriage. Looking at the elegant and composed Lucas before me, I chuckled softly and said, Mr. Smith, rather than relying on your sickly son to carry on the family line, how about I marry you and give you a few healthy heirs? A sharp pain exploded in my abdomen, like a sharp knife wildly twisting inside me. I curled up on the expensive Persian rug in the Smith family's villa, desperately protecting my stomach with my hands, but I couldn't block the relentless kicks. Bitch, it's all your fault. Charles Smith's drunken voice echoed from above, followed by another wave of excruciating pain. Blood gushed up from beneath me, staining the light-colored carpet red. I could feel my life slowly slipping away, along with the tiny 3-month-old life inside my womb. If it weren't for you swindling and colluding with others to claim you were a fertility goddess, my father wouldn't have forced me to marry an old woman like you. Susan wouldn't have married the wrong person and ended up beaten to death. Charles Smith's voice was filled with distorted hatred. My vision began to blur as my consciousness gradually faded. So that's how it is. So he's always hated me. The Smith family had only one male heir for 7 generations. Charles Smith was frail and sickly from a young age, with a constitution that made it difficult to conceive. The Smith family searched everywhere for a woman with good fertility, until they found me, the one doctors called naturally blessed with exceptional fertility. The Smith family welcomed me with a generous bride price. After Charles Smith married me, his health gradually improved, and I successfully became pregnant. Lucas's father, Lucas, was overjoyed and even promised to give me 10% of the company's shares, but all of This, in Charles Smith's eyes, became my sin. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but only spat out a mouthful of blood. Darkness surged like a tide, and in my last moments of consciousness, I swore that if there were a next life, Emma, Mr. Smith is already here. Why are you still spacing out? My mother's voice pulled me out of the chaos. I abruptly opened my eyes and found myself sitting in the living room at home, with a steaming cup of tea in front of me. The sunlight outside was bright, shining on my perfectly intact body. Is this, 1 year ago, Mr. Smith is here this time to propose marriage on behalf of his son, Charles Smith, my mother whispered to me, her eyes sparkling with excitement. The Smith family, they're truly wealthy and influential. My heart raced wildly, and my fingers unconsciously brushed over my flat abdomen. I've been reborn. I've truly been reborn. I've returned to the day Lucas first came to propose marriage. He looked up toward the door, where a tall, well-built middle-aged man was stepping inside. Lucas, 45 years old, was exceptionally well-preserved, and every gesture he made exuded the charm of a mature man. He was dressed in a well-tailored dark gray suit, with deep-set features and sharp yet gentle eyes. Miss, I've long heard of you. He greeted me with a nod, his voice deep and pleasant. In my previous life, I shyly lowered my head and accepted the arrangement to marry Charles Smith with a heart full of joy, but now, I looked directly at this man who dominated the business world and suddenly flashed a bright smile. Mr. Smith, please have a seat. I gestured gracefully and waited for him to sit before meeting his eyes. I heard your son is in poor health, and the Smith family is in urgent need of an heir. Lucas frowned slightly, seemingly taken aback by my directness. My son indeed needs a wife with good fortune. I chuckled softly, took a sip of tea, and said, Mr. Smith, instead of pinning your hopes of carrying on the family line on your sickly son, I deliberately paused, looking into his eyes. Why don't I marry you and give you a few more sons? With a clatter, the teapot in my mother's hand fell to the ground. Lucas's expression froze, his eyes flickering with shock, disbelief, and then deep contemplation. I maintained a smile, knowing that my words were like a bomb detonating in the heart of this patriarch from an old money family, where traditional values ran deep. Memories from my past life told me that Lucas had remained unmarried for years after losing his spouse, not because he had no desires, but for the sake of the family's image. And at this moment, I could see the fire gradually igniting in his eyes, a longing for heirs, a yearning for youthful vitality, and a stirring of interest in my bold proposal. Miss Emma, are you serious? His voice was slightly hoarse. I am 28 years old and in good health. The doctor said I have a rare fertility-friendly constitution, I said frankly. Rather than marrying someone who might be completely infertile and sickly every day, it would be better to become your wife directly and bear you a healthy heir. Lucas's eyes lit up as he scrutinized me carefully, as if evaluating a precious collection piece. I knew I had the upper hand. In my previous life, the doctor said that my constitution not only made it easy for me to conceive but also nourished my partner, surpassing any tonic. For Lucas, who was eager for offspring and whose health was gradually declining, this was an irresistible temptation. Dad, what are you doing? An angry voice came from the doorway. I turned to look and saw Charles Smith standing at the door, his face pale and his eyes filled with disbelief. He was even thinner than I remembered, looking as if a gust of wind could knock him over. How could I have thought such a man was worth entrusting my life to in my past life? She is my fiancée. Charles Smith rushed in but was frozen in place by a single glance from Lucas. From today onward, she is your mother. Lucas's voice left no room for doubt. Miss Emma is right. The Smith family needs healthy descendants. I felt a surge of satisfaction as I watched Charles Smith's contorted expression. The game has only just begun. Charles Smith, the pain you inflicted on me in my past life, I will repay 100-fold in this one. That afternoon, Lucas and I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau. The moment I held the marriage certificate in my hand, I knew the gears of fate had turned in a completely different direction. On the first day I moved into the Smith family's villa, I summoned the butler to the study. Butler Leo, in his early 50s, had worked for the Smith family for nearly 20 years, and his gaze held a barely concealed contempt when he looked at me. In my previous life, when I married Charles Smith, he had given me no shortage of trouble. Butler Leo, starting today, all the staff schedules and payrolls must be submitted to me for review every Monday. I sat in the leather swivel chair, lightly tapping the desk with my fingertips. Also, organized the detailed household expenses for the past 6 months. I want to review them. Butler Leo's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. Madam, I have always been in charge of these matters. The master never concerned himself with such trivialities. I smiled faintly. I am the one managing the household now. Is there a problem? I wouldn't dare. He lowered his head, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. By the way, I added as he turned away, change the bedsheets In the master bedroom to silk, Mr. Smith prefers them. Butler Leo's back stiffened slightly, and he bowed in acknowledgement. I knew this news would spread through the entire Smith household like wildfire. The new mistress not only held authority but had already shared a bed with the master after the butler left. I looked around the study. In my previous life, I was rarely allowed to enter here. But now it has become my center of power. I turned on the computer and pulled up the Smith family's household management system. The password hadn't changed. It was still Charles Smith's birthday, just like in my previous life. Despite his stern exterior, Lucas truly cherished his only son. The data on the screen made me raise my eyebrows. Just the flour expenses alone for 1 month amounted to $50,000, not to mention the expensive wines and ingredients. In my previous life, I thought the Smith family was just that extravagant, but now I realize someone was lining their own pockets. I was in the middle of recording the suspicious accounts when the door suddenly swung open. Charles Smith stood at the door, his face gloomy. Something wrong? I didn't look up, continuing to check the screen. Do you think marrying my dad gives you the right to do whatever you want in the Smith family? His voice was low, carrying a threat. Only then did I look up at him. Charles Smith, knocking is the most basic courtesy. Besides, you should call me Mom, or at least Auntie. His face instantly turned ashen as he strode to the table, planting his hands on the surface. Stop dreaming. You're nothing but a purchased breeding machine. I met his gaze calmly. Then what are you? A useless man who can't even reproduce. Charles Smith's pupils contracted sharply, and he raised his right hand to strike. I remained completely still, only raising my voice. Mr. Smith, your son is about to hit your wife. Charles Smith's hand froze midair as he turned to look at the doorway. Lucas was standing there at some point, his face terrifyingly dark. Get out, he said to Charles Smith, his voice as cold as ice. Charles Smith withdrew his hand and said through gritted teeth, Dad, she's looking into our family's accounts. She must have ulterior motives. I ordered the investigation. Lucas walked in and stood beside me. Your mother is now in charge of the household. Do you have any problem with that, Mother? Charles Smith laughed sharply. She's only 3 years older than me. Lucas's eyes turned stern. Age is not the issue. She is my lawfully wedded wife, which makes her your mother. If I hear you disrespect her again, I'll freeze your credit cards. Charles Smith opened his mouth but ultimately said nothing, then stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Don't mind him. Lucas turned to me. He's been spoiled. I smiled. It's fine. I'll be a good stepmother, especially when this good stepmother can push him into the fire. I added in my heart. Lucas nodded with satisfaction, then asked, What did you find in the accounts? I pulled up a few abnormal data points. Here and here, the expenditures are significantly higher than the market price. Also, I pointed at the screen, there were 3 large purchases last month, but the household inventory records don't match. Lucas's eyes grew cold. Butler Leo, let's not alert the enemy just yet, I said softly. I'll continue investigating and gather solid evidence. He looked at me with appreciation. You're more capable than I imagined. Just doing my duty, I said modestly, then changed the subject. By the way, I looked into the Brown family's information. Susan is 24 this year, just returned from studying in the UK, comes from a clean background, and the marriage alliance with the Brown group would also benefit the Smith family. Lucas thought for a moment. You're really concerned about Charles Smith's marriage? Of course, I said with a virtuous smile. Although he doesn't acknowledge me as his mother, I still consider him my son. Lucas, moved, took my hand and said, It's rare to see such sincerity. I will contact the Brown family to arrange a meeting. Watching his retreating figure, a cold smile curled at the corner of my lips. In the previous life, Susan was the unattainable white moonlight in Charles Smith's heart, but this young lady was arrogant and willful, and she looked down the most on weak and incompetent men. Marrying such a woman to Charles Smith would be more satisfying than any form of revenge. At dinner time, I changed into a dark green cheongsam, pinned up my hair, and put on the jade earrings Lucas had given me. In the mirror, I appeared dignified and elegant, exuding the aura of a wealthy matriarch. In the dining room, several close relatives of the Smith family had already taken their seats. Charles Smith, sitting at the lower end of the table, flashed a look of disgust when he saw me. I ignored him completely and walked straight to the seat beside Lucas, the one that, in my previous life, only Charles Smith's mother was allowed to occupy. I heard the lady of the house is checking the accounts. Charles Smith's aunt, Lisa Smith, spoke with a sarcastic tone. In such a hurry to take control as soon as you step through the door. I leisurely scooped a spoonful of soup. Auntie, you jest. It's a wife's duty to share her husband's burdens. I turned to Lucas. Isn't that right, darling? Lucas nodded. Emma is very capable and has identified some issues. I will handle this matter, Lisa Smith's face slightly changed, and she didn't dare to say anything more. By the way, I said as if suddenly remembering something, turning to Charles Smith, I've discussed your marriage with your father. Miss Brown will be visiting this weekend, so make sure you prepare well. Charles Smith's fork clattered onto his plate. What, Miss Susan, haven't you always admired her? I feigned surprise. Did I remember wrong? Charles Smith's expression was a sight to behold, first shock, then doubt, and finally a twisted delight. You want me and Susan to? The Browns are a well-matched family, and Miss Brown is both talented and beautiful. Lucas chimed in. Your mother's suggestion is excellent. At the mention of mother, Charles Smith's face darkened again, but the name Susan clearly left him unable to vent his anger. He lowered his head to eat, but the tips of his ears turned red. I took small bites of the foie gras, sneering inwardly. Just wait, Charles Smith, your dream will soon turn into a nightmare. The weekend arrived quickly. Susan came to visit, accompanied by her parents. She was wearing a designer dress, stepping in 10-centimeter high heels, with makeup so exquisite it looked like she was heading for the red carpet. Hello, Uncle Smith, she called out sweetly as soon as she entered, then paused noticeably when she saw me. And this is my wife, Emma. Lucas introduced. Emma, this is Miss Susan. I smiled and nodded. Miss Brown is indeed as beautiful as the rumors say. Susan forced a smile, but her eyes kept drifting toward Charles Smith. Charles Smith had dressed up specially today, but his pale complexion and frail figure appeared rather insignificant next to the tall and imposing Lucas. During the luncheon, Susan's parents showed great enthusiasm for the marriage proposal. Although the Brown family was considered wealthy, they still fell short when compared to the Smith family. Susan has been spoiled since childhood, but she has a kind heart, Mrs. Brown said with a smile. She and Charles Smith are about the same age, so they're sure to get along well. I noticed that Susan's smile seemed a bit forced. When Charles Smith attentively poured wine for her, she slightly frowned and subtly shifted her body to the side. What did Miss Brown study in the UK? I asked at an opportune moment. Art history, she replied with pride. I particularly enjoy Victorian-era paintings. What a coincidence. Charles Smith is also fond of art, I said with a smile. He has quite a collection of famous painting reproductions, right, Charles Smith? Charles Smith froze for a moment before hurriedly nodding. Yes, I especially like that Mona Lisa. Susan's mouth twitched. That's from the Renaissance period, by Da Vinci. The atmosphere became awkward for a moment. Charles Smith flushed red, while the disdain in Susan's eyes grew even more apparent. After the luncheon, while the elders were chatting, I deliberately guided Susan and Charles Smith to take a stroll in the garden. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, I saw Susan walking ahead with her arms crossed, while Charles Smith followed closely behind, looking like a mere follower. It seems they're getting along well, Lucas remarked with satisfaction. I smiled and said, yes, they are a perfect match. A month later, the engagement ceremony of Charles Smith and Susan was grandly held. As the hostess of the Smith family, I took care of everything, from the venue decoration to the guest list, leaving no detail overlooked. Lucas relied on me more and more, even publicly referring to me as his capable partner. At the engagement banquet, Charles Smith was wearing a custom-tailored suit, yet he still couldn't carry off that upright posture. Susan was stunning in a white dress, but the reluctance in her eyes was already hard to conceal. Congratulations, Charles Smith. His cousin John patted him on the shoulder, winking and making faces. Susan is known for her fiery temper. Can you handle her? Charles Smith forced a smile. Susan is very gentle. Is that so? John gestured with his chin toward a spot not far away. Then why has she been chatting so happily with that model all this time? I followed his gaze and saw Susan laughing and talking animatedly with a tall, handsome young man, occasionally placing her hand on his arm. Charles Smith's face instantly darkened. I'm going to check it out, he said through gritted teeth. I quietly followed, hiding behind a pillar to observe. Charles Smith walked over to Susan and whispered something in a low voice. Susan frowned. What's wrong with me chatting with my friends? Is it any of your business? But today is our engagement day. Charles Smith's voice carried a pleading tone. So what? Susan sneered. Should I kneel down and thank you for your great favor? She deliberately raised her voice. If it weren't for my father forcing me, who would want to marry a sickly person like you? Charles Smith stood frozen in place as if struck by lightning. Susan walked away proudly, arm in arm with the model. I appeared at just the right moment, pretending I had just passed by. Charles Smith, what's wrong? You look so pale. He turned to me abruptly, his eyes filled with resentment. Are you satisfied? This is the wonderful marriage you found for me. I looked innocent. What's wrong? Doesn't Miss Brown like you very much? Like, Charles Smith sneered. She looks down on me. It's all your fault. You did it on purpose, Charles Smith. Lucas's voice came from behind. Mind the occasion, Charles Smith closed his mouth, but the anger in his eyes was almost ready to burst out. I held onto Lucas's arm and said softly, "The child might be too nervous. After all, it's their first engagement." Lucas patted my hand and said, "You're always so understanding." That evening, the Smith family held a small family dinner to celebrate the engagement. Charles Smith didn't attend, using feeling unwell as an excuse. Susan did come, but she was absent-minded the whole time, constantly checking her phone. "I heard Charles Smith has been in poor health," Susan suddenly asked during the meal. "What exactly is the issue?" The table fell silent. Lucas put down his wine glass. "He's just a bit frail. He'll recover with some rest and care." "Is that so?" Susan raised an eyebrow. "Then why did my friend say he has a long-term medical record at RH Hospital, and that he—" She suddenly stopped, as if realizing she had said too much. Lucas's eyes sharpened. "Who is your friend?" Susan flustered. "Just a friend who studies medicine." I stepped in to smooth things over. "Miss Brown is also concerned about Charles Smith. Here, try this lobster. It was air-shipped from Australia this morning." After the dinner, Lucas called me into the study. "Susan is not simple. She's investigating Charles Smith. It's normal for young people to get to know each other before marriage." I poured him a cup of tea. Lucas shook his head. "It's not that simple. I suspect she has ulterior motives." He pondered for a moment, "but what's done is done. The engagement cannot be cancelled. The Smith family can't afford to lose face." I secretly rejoiced. This is exactly what I wanted, a marriage full of suspicion and resentment. "By the way," Lucas suddenly changed the subject, "how have you been feeling lately? Any unusual reactions?" I knew what he was asking. We had hardly used any contraception since we got married. In my previous life, I got pregnant just 3 months after marrying Charles Smith, so it should be about the same in this life. "No signs yet." I touched my flat abdomen, "but the doctor said my body is very fertile, so it should happen soon." A glimmer of anticipation flashed in Lucas's eyes. "If you need any supplements, just say the word. I'll have someone prepare them. You're so good to me." I leaned against his shoulder, hiding the coldness in my eyes. The next morning, I deliberately bumped into Charles Smith as he was getting up. He had 2 large dark circles under his eyes, clearly having not slept all night. "Charles Smith, why didn't you come to dinner last night?" I asked with concern. "Are you feeling unwell?" He looked at me coldly. "Cut the fake concern. I know you orchestrated all of this." I blinked. "Design what?" "Susan doesn't want to marry me at all." He growled in a low voice. "You knew all along, didn't you?" I sighed. "Charles Smith, marriage is a matter of parental orders and matchmakers' words. Miss Brown might not be used to it for now, but feelings can be cultivated." I deliberately paused. "Or, do you wish to marry a wife 17 years younger than you, just like your father did?" Charles Smith's face turned ashen, his fists clenched so tightly they cracked. "One day, I will make you regret this." "Emma, watch your tone, son," I said with a smile. "Don't forget, I am your mother now." Watching his furious retreating figure, I felt quite pleased. This is only the beginning. "Charles Smith, the pain you inflicted on me in my past life, I will return it to you bit by bit." Back in the bedroom, I stood in front of the full-length mirror and gently touched my abdomen. "Soon, there will be good news. When that happens, Charles Smith's status in the Smith family will plummet, and my revenge plan can truly begin." The morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains into the bedroom. I opened my eyes to find Lucas already up beside me. Reaching for the thermometer on the nightstand, I habitually began monitoring my basal body temperature, a key indicator for conception. The thermometer shows 36.7 degrees, which is 0.3 degrees higher than yesterday. I couldn't help but smile. Based on my past experience, this is a sign that ovulation is approaching. I rolled out of bed, took the prenatal nutrition pills from the drawer, and swallowed them with warm water. In the mirror, my complexion looked rosy and my skin was smooth. At 28, my body is at the optimal age for childbearing. I gently caressed my flat stomach, imagining the new life that will soon grow inside. In my previous life, I was killed by Charles Smith after bearing only 1 child. In this life, I will make the Smith family change completely. My phone vibrates. A message from the private detective. "I've obtained the target's recent activity records and medical files. The encrypted data has been sent to your secure email." I smile faintly, lock the bathroom door, and open my laptop. The file package sent by the detective contained Charles Smith's recent whereabouts, call records, and, most importantly to me, his complete medical history from RH Hospital. The medical report was filled with dense professional terminology, but a few key terms caught my eye: oligospermia, low sperm motility, and congenital physical weakness. Flipping to the end, the doctor's conclusion was particularly striking. Probability of natural conception is less than 5%. Assisted reproductive technology is recommended. I let out a cold laugh, continuing to Browse the materials sent by the detective. Charles Smith's recent call records caught my attention. A number frequently appears, often late at night. I noted down the number and sent it to another contact. Find out who this number belongs to, the sooner the better. Just as I closed my laptop, there was a knock at the door. "Madam, breakfast is ready." It was the voice of the maid. "Sophie, got it, coming right down." In the dining room, Lucas was reading the financial newspaper, with black coffee and whole wheat toast in front of him. Seeing me come in, he put down the newspaper. "Did you sleep well?" "Very well." I walked over to him and gave him a light kiss on the cheek. This action has become a habit, even though it was initially just for show in front of the servants. Lucas handed me a document. "Take a look at this." I opened the file. It was information about a medical device company that the Smith Group planned to acquire. In my previous life, this acquisition failed because the other party concealed a patent dispute, causing the Smith Group to lose tens of millions. "There's a problem." I pointed at the patent list. "The patent for this core product expires next year, and I heard there's an ongoing infringement lawsuit." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "How do you know that?" "I have a college classmate working at that company." I casually made up an excuse. "The acquisition price should be reduced by at least 30%, and we need to add a liability exemption clause for the patent dispute." Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "I'll have the legal department reassess it." His gaze held a bit more appreciation as he looked at me. "You always manage to surprise me." I smiled without saying a word. "This is just the beginning, Lucas. In my previous life, I was constantly exposed to Charles Smith's influence and became thoroughly familiar with the operations of the Smith Group. In this life, this knowledge will be my weapon to establish myself in the Smith family." Charles Smith staggered into the dining room, his face as pale as a ghost. He had 2 large dark circles under his eyes and was still wearing yesterday's clothes, all wrinkled as if he had slept on the sofa. "Stayed up late again." Lucas frowned. Charles Smith didn't answer and walked straight to the coffee machine, pouring Emma a large cup of black coffee. "Where is Miss Brown?" I asked deliberately. "Why didn't she come to have breakfast together?" Charles Smith's hand trembled, spilling coffee on his hand, but he seemed not to feel the burn. "What's it to you, Charles Smith?" Lucas shouted sternly. "Apologize to your mother. She is not my mother." Charles Smith turned around abruptly, the coffee cup slamming onto the table with a loud thud. "You married a woman who is only 3 years older than me. Don't you find that disgusting?" The servants in the dining room lowered their heads, pretending not to hear. Lucas's face darkened with fury as he slowly rose to his feet. "Come to my study now." Charles Smith shot me a defiant glance before following his father out of the room. I spread the jam slowly, but my ears were perked up, listening for any movement upstairs. Soon, faint sounds of shouting and things being thrown could be heard. 20 minutes later, Charles Smith stormed out of the study and slammed the door behind him. When Lucas came downstairs, his face had returned to calm, but the veins on his temples betrayed his anger. "He needs to reflect on his actions," Lucas said coldly. "I've frozen his credit cards for 3 months." I handed him a freshly brewed cup of coffee. "He's still young and doesn't know any better." 25 is still young. Lucas shook his head. "He's been spoiled by his mother." I didn't respond. In his previous life, Charles Smith's mother passed away early, and Lucas never remarried, spoiling his only son rotten until my appearance broke this balance. "By the way," Lucas changed the subject, "there's a charity banquet tonight. Will you accompany me?" "It would be my honor." I smiled. In my previous life, I was never taken to such occasions. Charles Smith always attended alone, using the excuse that I was of humble origins and didn't understand the rules. In the afternoon, while I was selecting an evening gown in the dressing room, my phone rang. It was a reply from the number inquiry. "The number belongs to Kevin, vice president of Smith Group, who has a close relationship with the target." Kevin. I narrowed my eyes. In my previous life, he was Charles Smith's right-hand man and later became an accomplice in his plot to harm me. I never expected their collusion to have started so early in the evening. I wore a wine-red mermaid dress and put on the diamond necklace Lucas had given me. In the mirror, I looked radiant, with no trace of my humble origins. "Beautiful," Lucas said, standing at the doorway, his eyes flashing with admiration. I held his arm as we went downstairs and happened to meet Susan, who had just returned home. She was wearing a crop top and hot pants, dressed for a night out, and she visibly froze when she saw us. "Are you heading out, Miss Brown?" I asked gently. "Meeting friends," she said nonchalantly, but her eyes kept darting toward Lucas. I noticed Lucas slightly frowning. "What about Charles Smith?" "Who knows?" Susan pouted. "Probably getting drunk in some bar." She jingled her car keys. "I won't disturb you two anymore," watching her sway her hips as she walked away. The corner of my mouth lifted slightly. It seemed this loving Engaged couple was leading quite an exciting life. The charity banquet was held at the Shangri-La Hotel, and the attendees were mostly business elites. Lucas became the center of attention as soon as he entered the room, with people constantly coming over to greet him. As for me, being Mrs. Smith, I naturally received unprecedented attention as well. Is this Mrs. Smith? Indeed, she is young and beautiful. A woman adorned with jewels scrutinized me. I heard you have a special constitution. I maintained a smile. You flatter me, Mr. Smith and I were simply destined to be together. Fate, she smiled meaningfully. The Smith family has had only one male heir for 7 generations, and that child Charles Smith is in poor health. Chairman Smith is getting anxious. I pretended not to catch the sarcasm in her words. Speaking of Charles Smith, his wedding to Miss Brown is scheduled for next month. I hope you'll honor us with your presence. Her expression stiffened. Clearly not expecting me to be so direct, Lucas chimed in at the right moment. Emma cares deeply about Charles Smith, even personally handling the wedding arrangements. The executives around exchanged glances, and their attitude toward me clearly became more respectful. It seems Lucas's public statement has had an effect. Halfway through the dinner, I excused myself to freshen up and went to the restroom. As soon as I stepped out of the banquet hall, I spotted a familiar figure, Kevin, hiding in a corner. While on the phone, don't worry, I've already placated Charles Smith. He lowered his voice. No matter how much Lucas dotes on that woman, it's useless as long as Charles Smith remains the sole heir. I quietly retreated to the corner and didn't come out until he had left. It seems Charles Smith and his confidant are already conspiring. In my previous life, how they step by step marginalized Lucas and ultimately caused my death. This life, I will repay them double. On the way home, Lucas received a call from the company saying there was new progress in the acquisition case. After hanging up, he rarely showed a smile. The other party agreed to a 35% price reduction and also accepted the exemption clause. Emma, you've made a great contribution. I just mentioned it casually. I said modestly, no, you have a good business mind. Lucas looked at me seriously. Starting tomorrow, come to the company with me. I want to hear your thoughts on a few projects. This was exactly what I wanted. More opportunities to get involved in the core business of Smith & Co. I'd be honored, I said softly. Over the next 2 weeks, I went to the company with Lucas every day, sat in on meetings, read documents, and gradually got a clear understanding of how Smith & Co. operated. Meanwhile, the private detective kept sending updates on Charles Smith and Susan. After Charles Smith's credit card was suspended, he began meeting with Kevin frequently. As for Susan, she was photographed entering and leaving high-end clubs with different men, including that model friend. The most dramatic part was when the detective captured Charles Smith waiting outside a hotel for 3 hours, only to see Susan come out arm in arm with another man. The expression on Charles Smith's face in the photo could almost be described as despair. I carefully preserved these materials, waiting for the perfect moment to use them. At the moment, there was something more important. My ovulation period had arrived. That evening, I deliberately changed into the silk nightgown I had bought not long ago and sprayed on Lucas's favorite perfume. When he pushed open the bedroom door, he clearly paused for a moment. What's the special occasion today? He asked, his gaze lingering on me. I walked up to him and helped him untie his tie. The doctor said these are the best days for conception. Lucas's eyes darkened as he reached out to stroke my face. Are you sure you're ready? Didn't I marry you exactly for this? I stood on tiptoe and whispered in his ear. Lucas, though much older, was a considerate partner, making it all very enjoyable. Moonlight streamed like water outside the window as I gently stroked my abdomen. I hope this time it will be a success. Having a child will truly secure my position in the Smith family. A month later, the family doctor confirmed the news of my pregnancy. Lucas was overjoyed and immediately ordered the nursery to be renovated, also assigning me a dedicated nutritionist and bodyguard. I want to host a dinner party, he said excitedly, to announce this wonderful news to everyone. I leaned against him and said, I'll do whatever you say. The dinner party was scheduled for the weekend, and all of Smith's relatives and business partners received invitations. Susan reluctantly attended with Charles Smith, and although they stood together, they barely communicated. Like strangers, halfway through the party, Lucas tapped his champagne glass, and the room fell silent. Thank you all for coming. He looked around at everyone, his voice booming. I have some wonderful news to share today. My wife Emma is pregnant. The Smith family is about to welcome a new generation. Applause erupted, and guests stepped forward one after another to offer their congratulations. I stood beside Lucas, accepting everyone's compliments, but my eyes remained fixed on Charles Smith in the corner. His face turned pale the moment he heard the news, and the glass in his hand fell to the ground with a crash, spilling red wine everywhere. Kevin quickly pulled him away, but that momentary expression was already deeply imprinted in my mind: shock, fear, despair, and hatred. Susan, on the other hand, brightened up and quickly walked over to me, saying, "Congratulations, Auntie." She deliberately emphasized the word aunt. "I hope it's a healthy baby." "Thank you," I smiled. "Both Lucas and I hope to have several children, especially since the Smith family has such a large estate." Lucas put his arm around my shoulder. "The doctor said Emma has a unique constitution and it's very likely she's carrying twins." The guests gasped in amazement once again. I caught a glimpse of Charles Smith standing in the distance, his eyes dark and menacing as he stared at my abdomen. That gaze sent a chill down my spine, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of satisfaction. After the dinner party ended, Lucas was pulled aside by a few executives to discuss business, so I excused myself, citing early pregnancy discomfort, and went back to my room to rest. Just as I reached the corner of the staircase, a hand suddenly grabbed my wrist and pulled me into a dark, small parlor. Charles Smith's face looked particularly ferocious in the dim light. "You wretch, do you think that just because you're pregnant, you can rest easy?" I shook off his hand and calmly straightened my sleeve. "Watch your language, Charles Smith. I am now carrying the heir to the Smith family." "Heir," he sneered. "Who knows if it's not a bastard?" "Would you dare say that in front of your father?" I retorted. "Or are you just jealous? After all, the doctor said it would be difficult for you to have children of your own in this lifetime." Charles Smith's pupils suddenly contracted. "You, how do you know?" "I know far more than you can imagine." I took a step forward. Though shorter than him, my presence was in no way weaker. "For instance, you're scheming with Kevin to undermine your father, or Susan's secret rendezvous with that model at the Four Seasons Hotel every Wednesday." Charles Smith's face turned pale. "You've been spying on me, just protecting my family." I smiled. "Charles Smith, accept your fate. From now on, your standing in the Smith family will only decline. But don't worry, as your mother, I'll take good care of you." He was so angry that his whole body trembled, and he raised his hand to hit me. I was prepared and quickly stepped back, pressing the play button on my phone at the same time. Lucas's voice came from the speaker. "Emma, where are you?" Charles Smith's hand froze in midair. I shook my phone. "Your father is looking for me. Do you want him to see you treating his wife and unborn child like this?" Charles Smith gritted his teeth and put his hand down. "We'll see about that." Watching his disheveled figure retreat into the distance, I let out a long sigh of relief. "This is just the first round. Charles Smith, when the child in my womb is born, your good days will truly be over." Back in the bedroom, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Smith family estate. Under the moonlight, a familiar figure was storming toward the garage. It was Charles Smith. A few minutes later, his sports car roared out of the main gate. I gently stroked my still flat abdomen, a cold smile curling at the corners of my lips. "Emma, please lie a little flatter, in the top-tier VIP examination room at RH Hospital." The cold ultrasound gel was applied to my lower abdomen. Lucas stood beside the examination bed, his eyes fixed intently on the ultrasound screen. "Mr. Smith, you might need to brace yourself." Director Lee, with graying hair, adjusted his glasses, his voice tinged with barely suppressed surprise. Lucas's body tensed instantly. "What's wrong? Is there a problem with the baby?" Director Lee didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved the probe to make the image on the screen clearer. I tilted my head to look. On the black and white image, several small dots were blinking rhythmically. "This is," I feigned surprise, covering my mouth. "For heartbeats." Director Lee's voice trembled slightly. "Miss Emma is pregnant with quadruplets." Lucas suddenly grabbed the edge of the examination bed, his knuckles turning white. "F4, yes, for separate gestational sacs, all developing well." Director Lee adjusted the image. "Look here, here, and here. All 4 heartbeats are strong." I glanced at Lucas's expression, the shock on his face slowly turning into ecstasy, with tears even welling up in the corners of his eyes. The 45-year-old middle-aged man was now as happy as a child. "Emma," he grabbed my hand, "did you hear that? For the Smith family is going to have 4 heirs all at once." I nodded with a smile, but inside, I was sneering. In my previous life, I was killed by Charles Smith after conceiving just 1 child. In this life, I will completely transform the Smith family, replacing that good-for-nothing with 4 healthy children. "This is nothing short of a miracle," Director Lee exclaimed. "The chance of naturally conceiving quadruplets is only 1 in 700,000. Miss Emma truly has a unique constitution." Lucas suddenly turned and said to his assistant standing in the corner, "Contact lawyer Jim immediately. I want to transfer 10% of Smith Group's shares to my wife. Get it done today." The assistant froze for a moment, then quickly pulled out his phone. I pretended to be surprised. "Lucas, this is too generous." "No, it's far from enough," Lucas said excitedly. "You've given the Smith family a future. You've given me hope." His Voice choked up. This was the first time I had seen this tough businessman so emotionally vulnerable. After the examination, Lucas carefully helped me sit up and personally wiped the coupling gel from my abdomen, as if I were some fragile treasure. Mr. Smith, quadruplet pregnancies carry higher risks and require extra attention, Director Lee said seriously. I recommend weekly checkups to monitor the fetal condition at all times. Of course, Lucas nodded. I'll arrange for the best medical team to be on standby 24/7. Walking out of the examination room, an unexpected person stood in the hallway. Charles Smith. He leaned against the wall, his face as gloomy as the sky before a storm. How did you get here? Lucas frowned. Charles Smith forced a stiff smile. I heard there's a prenatal checkup today, so I came to check on the little siblings. The last few words seemed to be squeezed out through gritted teeth. I keenly noticed his right hand tightly gripping the phone, knuckles turning white. Perfect timing, I smiled. I just finished the checkup and have good news to announce. Lucas couldn't wait to interject. Emma is having quadruplets. The Smith family is about to have 4 children all at once. Charles Smith's expression instantly froze, a flicker of panic in his eyes, followed by deep resentment. He forced a smile. That's truly congratulations. His voice was as dry as sandpaper. By the way, I asked casually, is Charles Smith here to see Director Lee? Charles Smith stiffened. No, Just then, a young doctor in a white coat hurried over from the end of the corridor. Seeing our group, he clearly paused, especially when his eyes flickered upon noticing Charles Smith. Dr. James, I called out his name accurately. In my previous life, it was he who helped Charles Smith forge my false pregnancy holy body certificate. Dr. James's expression changed. You know me. I've heard you're an expert in reproductive medicine, I said with a smile. I happen to have some questions I'd like to ask. Could we speak privately? Charles Smith suddenly interrupted. Dr. James is very busy. Let's do it another day. Just a few minutes, I insisted, while giving a signal to the bodyguard standing not far away. This bodyguard was newly assigned to me by Lucas, a former Special Forces soldier with exceptional skills. Dr. James hesitated and glanced at Charles Smith, but ultimately followed me to the corner of the hallway. Charles Smith wanted to follow, but Lucas stopped him to discuss company matters. Dr. James, I lowered my voice. What did Charles Smith ask you to do today? Dr. James's face instantly turned pale. I don't understand what you mean. Stop pretending, I sneered. He asked you to tamper with the medical report, didn't he? Like falsifying fetal abnormalities or reducing the number of fetuses. Dr. James's legs began to tremble. Madam, I took an envelope out of my bag and pulled out the photos inside, taken by a private investigator, showing Dr. James and Charles Smith having a secret conversation in a cafe. 2 choices, I said calmly. 1, I hand these over to Mr. Smith, and you not only lose your job but also face potential legal action. 2, you tell me all about Charles Smith's plan, and I'll act as if nothing ever happened. Dr. James broke out in a cold sweat on his forehead. Young Master Smith, he told me to mark single fetus developmental abnormality on your examination report, he said that way your father wouldn't pay as much attention. Sure enough, I sneered. What else did he promise you? He promised me the position of department head once the new Smith Group hospital is completed. Dr. James was on the verge of tears. Madam, I was foolish for a moment. I beg you, now, go tell Mr. Smith the truth, I commanded, or else, I understand, Dr. James nodded repeatedly. When we returned to Lucas, Charles Smith was explaining the progress of a certain project. Seeing Dr. James following behind me, his expression instantly turned to one of terror. Mr. Smith, Dr. James suddenly exclaimed loudly, I have something important to report. Lucas frowned. What is it, young Master Smith? He asked me to falsify Mrs. Smith's medical report. Dr. James blurted out. He said if I didn't do it, he would ruin my career in the medical field. The corridor fell into a terrifying silence. Lucas's face visibly darkened, while Charles Smith turned ashen. What nonsense are you talking? Charles Smith roared, grabbing Dr. James by the collar. I don't even know you. Enough, Lucas shouted sharply, his voice echoing through the hallway, causing several passing nurses to quickly walk away. We'll talk about it back at the company, he said in a lowered voice, though his anger was still evident. Dad, let me explain. Charles Smith panicked. This person is slandering me. It must be Emma's doing. She's trying to drive a wedge between us, father and son. Lucas looked coldly at his son. Is that so? Then what are these? He grabbed the photos from my hand and threw them in Charles Smith's face. Photographs were scattered all over the floor, clearly showing the secret meeting between Charles Smith and Dr. James. The evidence is irrefutable. Charles Smith's face turned from pale to ashen, then from ashen to red, and finally settled into a desperate pallor. He opened his mouth, but not a single word came out. Return to the company immediately. Lucas's voice was as cold as ice. Attorney Jim is also there. We need to revisit the issue of your shares. Charles Smith was as if struck by lightning, staggering back a step. Dad, you can't. No, Lucas shouted. Charles Smith shot me a final resentful glare, then turned and stumbled away. I promptly put on a worried expression. Lucas, don't be too angry. Charles Smith might have just had a momentary lapse in judgment. A momentary lapse of judgment, Lucas sneered. He was trying to harm my child. He held my hand tightly. Emma, thank goodness you were alert, otherwise, I leaned against his shoulder. I just happened to see them together and became a little more cautious. When I looked up, I caught Dr. James's relieved expression and smiled at him gently. Dr. James, thank you for exposing the truth. Once the new Smith Hospital is completed, we will consider your position. Dr. James froze for a moment, then quickly understood that I was keeping my promise. He bowed repeatedly. Thank you, madam, thank you. Madam, on the way back, Lucas held my hand tightly the entire time. The news of the quadruplets filled him with ecstasy, while Charles Smith's betrayal ignited his fury. These two extreme emotions intertwined on his face, creating a peculiar expression. Emma, he suddenly said, from today on, you must have someone with you 24/7. I will arrange for 2 more bodyguards. I pretended to be surprised. Is that really necessary? After all, Charles Smith is your son, precisely because he is my son? I know him well. Lucas's voice carried an unprecedented coldness. He was spoiled from a young age. If he can't have something, he'd rather destroy it. I lowered my head and gently touched my flat stomach, hiding the coldness in my eyes. Lucas was right. Charles Smith was indeed that kind of person. In my past life, when he couldn't have Susan, he took his anger out on me and our unborn child. By the way, Lucas changed the subject. Lawyer Jim has prepared the equity transfer documents. You just need to sign them this afternoon. I looked up, tears welling up in my eyes at the right moment. Lucas, this is too generous. You deserve it, he said firmly. 10% is just the beginning. Once the children are born, I will transfer more shares to your name. His eyes shone with determination. The future of the Smith family depends on you and the children. The signing ceremony in the afternoon was held in the top-floor conference room of the company. Lawyer Jim explained the details of the equity transfer in detail, while Lucas held my hand the entire time, his face filled with pride. After signing the documents, Lucas announced publicly, starting today, Emma officially becomes a shareholder of the Smith Group, holding 10% of the shares, and will join the board of directors. The executives present applauded in congratulations, but Kevin's expression was stiff, and his eyes kept darting toward Charles Smith in the corner. Charles Smith stood there, his face as dark as the sky before a storm, the documents in his hand crumpled out of shape. After the meeting, Lucas called a family gathering. Several key members of the Smith family sat around the long table, the atmosphere so tense it could be wrung out like water. Given Charles Smith's behavior today, Lucas got straight to the point. I've decided to adjust his position and equity in the company. Charles Smith looked up sharply. Dad, 3% of the 5% shares under your name will be reclaimed, leaving you with only 2%, Lucas said coldly. Your position as deputy director of the project department will be retained, but all major decisions must be signed off by Director Lin. Kevin was clearly taken aback, not expecting to be singled out. I sneered inwardly. Lucas had played this brilliantly. By having Charles Smith's trusted subordinate monitor him, he not only appeared fair but also drove a wedge between the two. This isn't fair. Charles Smith slammed the table and stood up. For the sake of a woman, you're going to ruin your own son. Watch your words, Lucas shouted sternly. That's your mother, and she's carrying your younger siblings. She is not my mother. Charles Smith screamed hysterically. She's just a fraud. Who knows whose bastards those children are? As soon as the words were spoken, Lucas had already slapped him. A sharp crack echoed as Charles Smith's face snapped to the side, a trickle of blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. Get out. Lucas's voice was as cold as ice. If I hear such words from you again, you can get out of the Smith family. Charles Smith covered his face, the hatred in his eyes almost tangible. He scanned the room, and his gaze finally landed on me, sending a chill down my spine. But in an instant, he became that aggrieved son again. Dad, I was wrong. His voice choked with emotion. I was just afraid of losing your love. Lucas's expression softened slightly seeing this. I immediately interjected gently. Lucas, it's good that the child realizes his mistake. Charles Smith just made a momentary misstep. After all, suddenly having 4 younger siblings would make anyone feel uneasy. These words may seem like a plea for Charles Smith, but in reality, every sentence strikes a painful chord. Sure enough, Lucas's expression turned cold again. A 25-year-old man, still so immature. Get out. In the end, Charles Smith shot me a resentful glare before storming out, slamming the door behind him. The meeting ended. Hastily, with the Smith family members dispersing, each lost in their own thoughts, when I returned home that evening, Lucas was still fuming, downing one glass of whiskey after another. I walked over with a cup of hot milk and gently held his hand. "Stop drinking. It's not good for your health." Lucas put down his glass and rubbed his temples wearily. "Am I too much of a failure to have raised my son like this?" "It's not your fault," I said, leaning against his shoulder. "Some people are just not quite right from the start." Lucas suddenly looked up. "What do you mean?" I pretended to hesitate. I shouldn't say, speak," Lucas commanded. "Last time when I was organizing the study, I accidentally saw Charles Smith's medical file," I whispered. "The doctor diagnosed him with antisocial personality tendencies." Lucas was thunderstruck. "What? How come I didn't know?" "Perhaps your ex-wife was afraid you'd worry, so she kept it hidden," I cautiously speculated. "The file was concealed inside the book cover of Das Kapital, very well hidden." Lucas immediately stood up and rushed toward the study. I followed slowly, knowing he would find the meticulously forged medical report. In the previous life, Charles Smith did have psychological issues, but they were never formally diagnosed. In this life, I want Lucas to see his son's true nature clearly. The sound of rummaging through boxes and cabinets came from the study, followed by Lucas's cursing. I stood at the door, watching his trembling hands holding that medical report, his face filled with shock and pain. No wonder he's always enjoyed tormenting small animals since he was a child," Lucas muttered to himself. "I thought it was just a boy being mischievous." I walked over and hugged him. "Don't be too upset. It's not too late to know now. We can hire the best psychologist." Lucas shook his head, a resolute glint in his eyes. "No, some people are born demons. From today onward, I will no longer be soft on him." I leaned against his chest, a cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth. "Charles Smith, your good days are truly over." Late at night, I stood by the bedroom window, watching a sports car roar out of the Smith family's gate. It was Charles Smith, off to vent his anger somewhere again. I gently caressed my abdomen, feeling the 4 little lives growing inside. "Charles Smith, this is only the beginning," I whisper into the night. "The pain you inflicted on me in my past life, I will return it to you bit by bit." My phone vibrates, a message from the private detective. "The target is meeting secretly with Kevin at Nightfall Bar. The conversation has been recorded. Should I send it now?" I reply, "Not yet. Continue monitoring." Putting down my phone, I lay on the bed, feeling the subtle changes within my body. 4 little lives are thriving inside me. They are my tools for revenge and my foundation for standing firm in the Smith family. Charles Smith, no matter what you plan, you cannot escape my notice. In this lifetime, I will watch you step by step toward destruction. By the 4th month of pregnancy, my belly was noticeably larger than that of an average pregnant woman. Carrying quadruplets often caused back pain, but every time I felt the movements of those 4 little lives by touching my belly, all the fatigue turned into sweetness. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains into the bedroom. I leaned against the headboard, flipping through the documents Lucas had left on the nightstand. It was a proposal about the Smith Group's acquisition of a coastal resort. In my previous life, this project had caused the Smith Group significant losses due to fraudulent environmental assessments. Working so early, Lucas emerged from the bathroom, his hair still dripping with water. At 45, the man maintained an excellent physique, with well-defined abdominal muscles, showing no signs of approaching the age of 50. I waved the document and said, "There's a problem with this project." Lucas raised an eyebrow and sat on the edge of the bed, asking, "What do you mean?" "The environmental assessment report here." I pointed to one of the pages. "The data is too perfect, so perfect it seems unreal." I checked the local forums, and some fishermen mentioned that the water quality has noticeably deteriorated over the past 2 years, but the report doesn't mention it at all. Lucas frowned as he tipped the document and said, "Kevin is in charge of the environmental part. Director Lynn might be too busy to notice the details," I said casually, though actually implying Kevin's negligence. In my previous life, it was he and Charles Smith who jointly covered up this issue. Lucas pondered for a moment, then picked up his phone. "I'll have a third party reassess it." I smiled without speaking. Since the hospital incident last time, Lucas has trusted my business intuition more and more over the past month. The few issues I accidentally discovered have successfully helped Mr. Smith avoid risks. Now, I've earned the nickname Lucky Star in the boardroom. My phone vibrated, a new message from the private investigator. "The target had a heated argument with Susan last night. Susan left home and is now staying in room 2806 at the Four Seasons Hotel. A male visitor arrived at 2 a.m. I deleted the message, a slight smile curling at the corner of my mouth. Charles Smith and Susan's perfect marriage finally fell apart. In her previous life, Susan was the pure and unattainable love in Charles Smith's heart, but in this life, she became his nightmare. "How are you feeling today?" Lucas changed into his suit, leaned down, and gently kissed my forehead. "Pretty good." I stroked my belly. It's just that the little ones are too active. They kept me up all night with their kicking. Lucas's large hand covered my abdomen, just in time to feel a distinct fetal movement. His eyes instantly softened. So mischievous, just like you. Not at all. It must be like you, I coquettishly retorted. So domineering, never. Giving me a moment's peace, Lucas chuckled softly, kissed me once more, and then left, listening to his footsteps fade away. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. Dear Lee, this is Emma. I'd like to reschedule my checkup for next week. Yes, change it to Wednesday at 10 a.m. No, please don't notify anyone else, including Mr. Smith. I want to surprise him. After hanging up the phone, I slowly got up and washed up. In the mirror, although my belly was bulging, my limbs were still slender, and my face had the rosy glow unique to pregnancy. In my previous life, when I was pregnant with Charles Smith's child, I suffered from severe morning sickness that left me utterly miserable. This time, however, the pregnancy has been surprisingly smooth, with very little nausea. When I went downstairs for breakfast, the attitude of the servants was even more respectful than before. Ever since I became a shareholder of the Smith family, even the usually arrogant butler Leo has learned to lower his head. Madam, your freshly squeezed orange juice, Sophie said cautiously as she placed the cup in front of me. I nodded in thanks and casually opened today's financial newspaper. The front page prominently featured the news of Smith Group's successful acquisition of a medical device company, accompanied by a photo of Lucas looking triumphant. This report was supposed to appear a year later, but now it has been advanced due to my intervention. While having breakfast, the doorbell rang. A moment later, Sophie rushed and flustered. Madam, Miss Brown. Miss Brown's mother is here and says she wants to see you. I raised an eyebrow. Please show her in. Mrs. Brown stormed into the dining room with an angry expression, her well-maintained face filled with fury. Emma, what do you mean by this? Why are you spreading rumors to ruin my daughter's reputation? I wiped my mouth unhurriedly. Mrs. Brown, I don't understand what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. Mrs. Brown slammed the table. What's the deal with those photos? Susan, with different men, those kinds of photos are spreading all over the social circle now. I feigned surprise. What photos? I really don't know. After a pause, but a few days ago, a friend did mention seeing Miss Brown at nightfall with a man, being very intimate. I even defended her, saying it must be a misunderstanding. Mrs. Brown's face turned pale, then flushed with anger. You, Mrs. Brown. My tone turned cold. What your daughter has done has nothing to do with me. Instead of questioning me, you should focus on disciplining your daughter properly. After all, she's still the Smith family's daughter-in-law. Mrs. Brown was left speechless by my retort, and finally threw out the words "we'll see" angrily before storming out. Slamming the door, I picked up my phone and sent a message to the private detective. The photos were spread well. The final payment has been made. Putting down the phone, I finished my orange juice with a pleased mood. In her previous life, Susan was a socialite with a chaotic private life that was never exposed. In this life, I will make Charles Smith taste the bitterness of being a cuckold and let everyone know what kind of woman he married. In the afternoon, I went to the Smith Group headquarters as planned. Ever since I became pregnant, Lucas specially arranged a private office for me next to the CEO's office, making it convenient for me to rest at any time. Shortly after I sat down, Kevin knocked and entered, wearing an artificial smile. Chairman Emma, here is the environmental assessment for the new project. Please take a look. I took the document and pretended to read through it carefully. This new assessment is clearly much more rigorous than the previous one. It seems my reminder this morning had an effect. Well done, I said, closing the file. Director Lynn has worked hard. Kevin's smile was stiff. It's my duty. He hesitated for a moment. Charles Smith has been in a bad mood lately, I hope Chairman Emma won't take it personally. I raised an eyebrow. Director Lynn and Charles Smith have a good relationship. Sweat beaded on Kevin's forehead. We're just colleagues, just showing some concern. Is that so? I smiled. Then please tell him that, as his stepmother, I am very concerned about his physical and mental well-being. If he needs a psychologist, the Smith family can arrange for the best. Kevin nodded repeatedly and hastily retreated from the office. I sneered coldly and picked up my phone to check the monitoring software. This software was connected to the listening devices I had installed in Lucas's study in Charles Smith's apartment, a masterpiece from a private investigator. Sure enough, half an hour later, Kevin and Charles Smith met up at a cafe. The listening devices clearly transmitted their conversation. That bitch is getting suspicious. Charles Smith's voice was filled with resentment. She must know we tampered with the environmental assessment. Calm Down, Kevin whispered. The most important thing now is not to alert her. I've already made arrangements at the hospital for when she gives birth. Still have to wait. Charles Smith almost shouted. She's already flaunting my father's child in the boardroom. If we wait a few more months, will there even be a place for me in the Smith family? Keep your voice down, Kevin warned. The plan is set. Accidents in the delivery room are all too common. Massive hemorrhage, amniotic fluid embolism. Any one of them could take her life. When the time comes, your father will be too grief-stricken, and the company will still have to rely on you. My blood instantly ran cold. In my previous life, Charles Smith only caused me to miscarry by kicking me while drunk, but in this life, they actually planned to take my life directly. Forcing myself to calm down, I continued to eavesdrop. What about those 4 bastards? Charles Smith asked through gritted teeth. Let's solve this together, Kevin's voice was so cold it didn't sound human. Premature babies are too fragile. It's normal for accidents to happen. I turned off the monitoring software and instinctively placed my hands over my abdomen. Although I had anticipated that Charles Smith would retaliate, I never imagined he could be this malicious. After taking a few deep breaths, I dialed the private investigator's number. I need you to look into a few people. Yes, from the obstetrics and gynecology department at RH Hospital. Especially those connected to. After hanging up, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing down at the city. The sun is still shining brightly, and the pedestrians are as insignificant as ants. At this height, everything is under control, including Charles Smith's murder plan, which he thought was well concealed. When I returned home in the evening, Lucas had come back unusually early and was handling documents in the study. I walked in with a cup of warm milk and found him reading a medical report. What is this? I asked curiously. Lucas quickly closed the file. Nothing, just a routine physical exam report. He changed the subject. Were the babies good today? I pretended not to notice his odd behavior and replied with a smile. They were quite good, just a little hungry. I stroked my belly. Lucas, I want to change to a different hospital for the delivery. Lucas frowned. What's wrong? Isn't RH the best? It is the best, but I hesitated. I heard that several medical staff have recently resigned, and I'm worried it might affect the quality of service, and I lowered my voice. I heard that Charles Smith and Kevin have connections at RH. Lucas's eyes sharpened. What did they do? There's no solid evidence. I shook my head. It's just a gut feeling. Maybe I'm overthinking because of the pregnancy. Lucas thought for a moment, then picked up his phone. I'll contact my friends in the US and arrange for a top-tier obstetrics team to come. It'll be safer to have the delivery at home. I leaned against his shoulder. I'll leave it all to you. This was exactly what I wanted, giving birth at home, with complete control over the medical team. Charles Smith's scheme will be completely foiled. 3 days later, the private detective sent a full report. RH Hospital indeed had 2 medical staff members with financial dealings with Kevin, including an anesthesiologist and a nurse. Even more shocking, the report revealed that Charles Smith had recently purchased a colorless and odorless drug capable of causing postpartum hemorrhage. I printed out the report and locked it in the safe. These will be powerful tools to use against Charles Smith in the future, but now is not the time to expose them. I will wait until he actually makes a move, then catch him red-handed. At the weekend family dinner, Charles Smith made a rare appearance since his shares were reduced. He rarely appears at family occasions, but today was an exception. He even smiled at me. If that twisted expression could be called a smile. Aunt Emma, he deliberately used a respectful tone. I heard you changed your medical team. I smiled and said, yes, your father was concerned and specifically hired a team from the United States. The corner of Charles Smith's mouth twitched. Then, where will the production take place? At home, Lucas interjected. The delivery room is already prepared, more comfortable and safer than a hospital. I saw Charles Smith's hand tremble slightly, but he quickly regained control. That's wonderful. I'm looking forward to the birth of my younger siblings. Thank you for your concern, I said softly. By the way, why didn't Miss Brown come? Charles Smith's face instantly darkened. She isn't feeling well. I pretended to be concerned. Should we call the family doctor? Pregnant women can't afford to be careless. Pregnant? Lucas looked at me in surprise. Susan is pregnant. Charles Smith's face turned pale. No, that's not it. She's just, I heard she went to the gynecology department last week, I said softly. I thought there might be good news. Lucas frowned. Charles Smith, what's really going on? Charles Smith broke out in a cold sweat. It's just a routine checkup. I tactfully changed the subject. All right, let's eat first. The pregnancy talk is making the young ones uncomfortable. Undercurrents surged at the dinner table. Charles Smith's gaze drifted toward me from time to time, filled with venom and fear. He must be worried about the failure of the production plan, and even more afraid that Susan's scandal would be exposed. After the meal, Lucas was called away by a phone call. I excused myself due to pregnancy fatigue and went back to my room to rest, but was stopped by Charles Smith at the corner of the stairs. "What do you know?" he questioned in a low voice, a dangerous glint flashing in his eyes. I pretended to be confused. "What do you mean, stop playing dumb?" He grabbed my wrist, "About Susan," and let go of the lady. The bodyguard's voice came from behind, and the next second, Charles Smith was pinned against the wall. I rubbed my wrist and looked at him coldly. "Charles Smith, what are you doing? You'll regret this, Emma." Charles Smith gritted his teeth. "I swear, you'll regret it." The bodyguard looked at me, waiting for instructions. I shook my head. "Let him go, Charles Smith. I suggest you calm down. Impulse is the devil." Charles Smith straightened his clothes, gave me one last glare, and then turned and left. Watching his staggering figure, I knew he had reached a dead end, and a cornered beast is often the most dangerous. Returning to the bedroom, I locked the door and retrieved a small self-defense stun gun from under my pillow. This was given to me by a private detective, powerful enough to incapacitate a grown man. Charles Smith's madness has exceeded expectations. I must be even more cautious. Outside the window, the setting sun dyed the Smith estate blood red. I gently caressed my swollen belly, feeling the movements of the 4 little lives inside. "Don't be afraid, Mommy will protect you," I whispered in promise. "No one can harm us." The game of revenge has reached a critical moment. Charles Smith's murderous intent has surfaced, and my counterattack has only just begun. In the early hours of the morning, just as I had completed my 32nd week of pregnancy, a sharp pain jolted me awake from my sleep. Instinctively, I reached for my abdomen, and my palm immediately felt an unusual tightness, contractions, and they were coming fast and intense. "Lucas," I shook my husband awake beside me, my voice trembling with pain. "I think I'm going into labor." Lucas snapped awake instantly and pressed the emergency call button by the bedside. The entire Smith estate immediately lit up as bright as day, the alarm waking everyone, 2 weeks ahead of the due date. Lucas helped me get dressed while giving instructions into the intercom. "Activate the emergency plan immediately and contact the medical team." I gritted my teeth, cold sweat beating on my forehead. "Don't be afraid. The American medical team will arrive within 20 minutes. Lucas picked me up and strode toward the already prepared home delivery room. "Everything will go smoothly." I clutched his collar tightly and suddenly remembered something. "Wait, your phone. Bring it." Lucas paused for a moment but turned back to grab his phone. I breathed a sigh of relief. In my previous life, he had forgotten his phone when he went out today and missed an important call, which caused the company to suffer heavy losses. In this life, I must make sure he can answer that call at any time. The delivery room was fully prepared, with a suitable temperature and complete equipment, looking no different from a high-end hospital's delivery room. Lucas carefully placed me on the bed, and the nurses immediately gathered around to conduct the examination. "The cervix is already dilated 4 centimeters. We must deliver immediately," Chief Obstetrician Catherine announced after the examination. "The risk of premature birth for quadruplets is very high, and we need to prepare the NICU right away." Lucas looked grave. "Do everything you can to ensure the safety of both the mother and the children." Another wave of contractions hit, and the pain was so intense that my vision went dark, but I still forced myself to stay conscious. "Something's wrong, something's very wrong, given my physical condition. I shouldn't be giving birth this early." "Lucas," I struggled to grasp his hand. "Check everyone who entered the manor today, especially the medical team." Lucas frowned. "You suspect?" "Please." The veins on my forehead bulged. "For the children." Lucas immediately turned and ordered the head of security, "Lock down the manor, verify everyone's identity, especially the newly arrived medical staff." The head of the bodyguards left to carry out the order. I felt slightly relieved, but the pain in my abdomen grew increasingly intense, almost making it impossible for me to think. "Madam, push. I can already see the first baby's head, dear," Catherine encouraged. I clenched my teeth and pushed with all my strength. After a tearing pain, the first baby's cry rang out. "It's a boy," the nurse announced excitedly. "Though premature, his cry is strong." I smiled weakly, but before I could feel joy, the next wave of contractions came. Having quadruplets meant going through labor 4 times, and my strength was rapidly draining. "The second child is out, and it's another boy." Just then, a commotion erupted outside the door. The head bodyguard rushed in, his face unusually grim. "Mr. Smith, we found a fake nurse in the changing room. She was carrying syringes and unidentified drugs." Lucas's expression changed abruptly. "Interrogate her thoroughly to find out who sent her. He's already been hired." "It's..." The head of security hesitated and glanced at me. "It's young Master Charles Smith." Even though I had anticipated it, this news still sent a tremor through my heart. Charles Smith had indeed made his move, and it was even more ruthless than in the previous life. Not an impulsive act after getting drunk, but a carefully planned murder. That unfilial son. Lucas was furious and turned to rush out. Wait, I grabbed his hand with all my strength. There are still 2 children. I need you here. Lucas struggled for a moment but finally nodded. I'll handle things here first. That rebellious son won't get far. The production continued, but the atmosphere was noticeably much more tense. The bodyguards stood ready outside the delivery room, and even the medical staff were under close surveillance. I am exhausted, but I dare not slack off in the slightest. The 3rd child, a girl. Just as the 3rd baby was born, Lucas's phone suddenly rang. He intended to hang up, but his expression changed slightly upon seeing the number. It's an emergency contact from the Swiss bank. Answer, I said weakly. It's important. Lucas gave me a puzzled look but still picked up the phone. Hello, what? His expression shifted from shock to anger. Freeze that account immediately. I'll send someone to handle it right away. After hanging up, Lucas's face turned terrifyingly dark. Charles Smith is transferring overseas assets and even forged my signature. He gritted his teeth. He's planning to flee. I closed my eyes, sneering inwardly. Charles Smith, you really are like a cornered dog. The last one, a girl. Congratulations, 2 boys and 2 girls. A perfect combination, dear, Catherine announced. The 4 little lives were carefully placed beside me. Though premature, they were crying loudly and appeared to be healthy. I gently touched their wrinkled little faces, my vision blurred by tears. In my previous life, I failed to protect the child, but in this life, they have finally been born safely. Lucas, let's give the children names, I said softly. Lucas looked at the 4 little lives, the anger in his eyes slightly subsiding. The eldest will be Ivan, the 2nd Jack, the 3rd Luna, and the 4th Linda. Sounds lovely. I smiled, then suddenly remembered something. By the way, you should head to the company. The matter with the Swiss bank needs to be handled personally. Lucas hesitated, looking at me and the children. But you, with the bodyguards and medical team here, it's safe, I insisted. The company matters more. Lucas finally nodded. I'll be back as soon as possible. He kissed me and the children on the forehead and hurried away. I knew what he was about to face, the car accident arranged by Charles Smith. In this life, I will not only save myself and the children, but also Lucas. After confirming that Lucas had left, I asked the nurse to take the children to the nursery next door to rest, leaving only the most trusted head of security, Captain Sam. I forced myself to stay awake. Mr. Smith is in danger. Charles Smith has arranged an accident on his way to the company. Captain Sam's face turned pale. I'll notify Mr. Smith immediately. No, don't alert the enemy. I shook my head. Take a few reliable people and set up an ambush ahead of time on that road section. Remember, it's a blue truck with license plate ending in 37. Captain Sam looked at me in shock. Madam, how do you know? There's no time to explain, I said weakly but firmly. You must ensure Mr. Smith's safety. After catching the perpetrator, send them directly to the police station. Don't let Charles Smith know. Captain Sam accepted the order and left. I let out a long sigh and finally allowed myself to close my eyes for a short rest. When I woke up again, Lucas was sitting by the bed, his expression terrifyingly grim. Seeing me open my eyes, he immediately took my hand. Emma, you're awake. Are the children okay? My voice was hoarse. Good. They're all under observation in the incubator, but the doctor says they're very healthy. Lucas forced a smile, but the anger in his eyes was unmistakable. Captain Sam caught the truck driver, and he confessed that Charles Smith was behind it. I feigned shock. What? He wanted to kill you, not just me. Lucas's voice was as cold as ice. He planned to take both of us out today, then flee abroad with the transferred assets. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down, and these tears are half real and half fake, for Charles Smith's cruelty, and for the joy of the plan's success. Emma, I owe you my life. Lucas held my hand tightly. If you hadn't reminded me to bring my phone, if you hadn't sensed the danger, what about Charles Smith? I asked softly. He ran, but he can't run far. Lucas sneered. I've frozen all his accounts and issued a citywide manhunt. He won't be able to escape. I nodded and said nothing more. Charles Smith's fate was already sealed. 3 days later, I was barely able to get out of bed and walk. The first thing I did was go see the children in the nursery. For little babies lay in incubators, their tiny hands and feet moving occasionally, so adorable it could melt your heart. They are so beautiful, dear. Catherine stood beside me. Although they were born prematurely, all their indicators are good. They can leave the incubators after 1 more week of observation. I gently touched the glass of the incubator, feeling an unprecedented sense of protectiveness welling up inside me. These 4 little lives are the motivation for my revenge and the hope for my new life. Madam, Captain Sam hurried over. We have news about Charles Smith. I followed Captain Sam into the hallway. Go on. He was caught at the docks trying to stow away to Southeast Asia. Captain Sam said quietly, Mr. Smith has already had him committed to a psychiatric hospital, claiming antisocial personality disorder, requiring compulsory treatment. I raised an eyebrow. A psychiatric hospital. That was unexpected, but upon further thought, it was even more cruel than prison. A person who believes they are normal, locked away in a psychiatric hospital, forced to receive daily injections and undergo treatment. Where is Susan? I asked. She filed for divorce yesterday and ran off with all the money she could take, Captain Sam said with a look of disdain. I heard she is indeed pregnant, but the child isn't Charles Smith's. I let out a light chuckle. In her previous life, Susan was the unattainable ideal in Charles Smith's heart, but in this life, she became the final straw that broke him. Fate can be so ironic at times. When I returned to the ward, Lucas was waiting for me, holding a document in his hand. Emma, he said with a serious expression, I have amended the will. From today onward, you own 45% of the Smith Group's shares, making you the largest shareholder. I looked at him in shock. This is too much. This is what you deserve. Lucas held my hand. You have not only given the Smith family a future but also saved my life twice. He paused. As for Charles Smith, the 2% shares under his name have been recovered. From now on, he will only receive a basic living allowance each month, supervised by a trust fund. I leaned against his shoulder, hiding the coldness in my eyes. Charles Smith, you finally have nothing left. The mental hospital will be your final destination, just like my past life, trapped in a hopeless marriage, only to die miserably under your feet. A week later, the children were taken out of the incubators and brought back to the Smith family estate. Lucas hired 4 professional maternity nurses to take care of them around the clock. As for me, I gradually began taking over the operations of the Smith Group. Sitting in Lucas's former seat, I flipped through the documents, a smile unconsciously forming at the corner of my mouth. In my previous life, I was merely a tool for reproduction, used by others. In this life, however, I have become the helm of this business empire. My phone vibrated, and a message from the private detective came through. Target has been in the mental hospital for 3 days, refusing to admit any illness, was forcibly injected with sedatives. Special care has been arranged as per your request, I replied. Continue observing and report regularly. Putting down my phone, I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the panoramic view of the city. The sunlight streams through the glass, warm and bright, spilling over me. For children are sleeping peacefully in the nursery downstairs. Lucas obeys my every word. And Charles Smith is living a fate worse than death in the mental hospital. The taste of revenge is even sweeter than I imagined. Madam, the secretary said, knocking and entering. Here are the meeting minutes for today. Please take a look. I took the document and elegantly signed my name. Emma, once that pitiful woman who was deceived, exploited, and killed, had now risen from the ashes like a phoenix. By the way, I called out to the secretary who was about to leave. Please contact the person in charge of the maternal and infant brand Perfect Circle for me. I'd like to discuss a collaboration. The secretary nodded and left. This is my newly invested maternal and infant brand, whose name is a homophone of Lucas and my name, symbolizing my rebirth, a complete life, a complete revenge. In the evening, I was holding my youngest daughter Linda for a walk in the garden when Lucas came over and gently put his arm around my shoulder. Are you tired? Not tired, I smiled, looking at the children. All the weariness disappears. Lucas kissed the top of my head. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for giving me all of this. I leaned against his chest, watching the sunset dye the Smith family estate golden. For children, a husband who loves me, supreme power and wealth. All of this was bought with the blood and tears of my past life. Charles Smith, in the mental hospital. Have you ever regretted that kick? The quadruplets 100-day celebration was held at the Smith family estate, with almost all the business elite in attendance. I was wearing a custom-made champagne-colored gown, standing in the center of the banquet hall, receiving congratulations from everyone. My abdomen had already returned to its flat state, even firmer than before pregnancy, thanks to the strict postpartum recovery training every day. Chairman Emma, congratulations, all 4 babies are healthy and beautiful. What a blessing. A female jewelry company owner warmly grasped my hand and said, for our new baby collection, we've specially prepared a set for each of your 4 little ones. I smiled and expressed my thanks, my peripheral glance catching Lucas standing not far away. He was holding his youngest daughter, Linda, with an unmistakable look of pride on his face. Having a child at 45 was already no small feat, but having 4 healthy children at once made him a legend among his circle of friends. In a corner of the banquet hall, 4 nannies each held a child, surrounded by guests eager to share in the joy. I walked over and gently touched each child's little face. The eldest Ivan, was sound asleep, while the second, Jack, was wide-eyed and looking around. The third, Luna, and the fourth, Linda, were like two awake angels, neither crying nor fussing. "Madam, there's a phone call for you." The butler, Uncle Lin, came over and handed me the phone. Since the last time he was caught embezzling, this old butler's attitude had become much more respectful. The private detective on the phone said, Emma. Charles Smith was released from the mental hospital yesterday. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, why?" The diagnosis stated that he was in stable condition, and since Susan left him some money during the divorce, he paid the bail. The detective paused, but as soon as he left the hospital, someone started following him. Who? Several wealthy heirs who had been bullied by him before. The detective's voice carried a hint of schadenfreude. "I heard he was forced to drink until he had a stomach hemorrhage at the bar last night, and this morning, loan sharks came after him for debts. Now he's hiding in a small motel in the eastern part of the city." A slight smile tugged at the corner of my lips. "Keep an eye on him and report back at any time." After hanging up the phone, I turned my gaze to the crowd in the banquet hall, where glasses clinked and toasts were exchanged. 3 months ago, Charles Smith was still the eldest son of the Smith family, basking in glory and prestige. Now, he has become a stray dog, despised by everyone. Karma truly never misses its mark. "Emma." Lucas walked over, holding Linda in one arm and handing me a document with the other. "Lawyer Jim has brought the equity transfer agreement. You just need to sign it." I opened the document. 45% of the Smith Group's shares were officially transferred to my name. This meant that not only had I become the largest shareholder of the group, but I was also legally recognized as the true lady of the Smith family. "Thank you." I signed my name and looked up to see the tenderness shimmering in Lucas's eyes. In this life, he truly gave me everything I wanted: status, wealth, children, and respect. By the way, Lucas lowered his voice, "Charles Smith has been released." I pretended to be surprised. "Really? What did the doctor say?" "They said he's no longer aggressive and can reintegrate into society." Lucas sneered. "I've got people watching him. If he steps out of line again, he'll be sent back immediately." I nodded and said no more. Charles Smith was no longer a threat. A worthless man abandoned by his family, divorced by his wife, and left penniless, living was more painful than death for him. After the banquet, I convened my first board meeting as the largest shareholder. In the conference room, the executives who had once ignored me were now all showing great respect. Regarding the development plan for the Perfect Circle mother and baby brand, I opened the folder. "I believe we should increase our online marketing efforts while also opening physical experience stores." Kevin, Charles Smith's former right-hand man, now my capable assistant, immediately agreed. "Excellent insight, Chairman Emma. Our marketing department has already prepared a detailed proposal." After the meeting, I stayed alone in the office, opened my computer, and checked the latest photos sent by the private investigator. Charles Smith was curled up on a bed in a shabby hotel, his complexion sallow, his eyes sunken, completely unrecognizable as the former young master of the Smith family. The next photo is even more exciting. Susan, arm in arm with a young man, walking into a high-end jewelry store. Her belly was already slightly rounded, clearly several months pregnant. I put down my phone, the sunlight streaming through the glass and falling on me, warm and bright. The taste of revenge is sweeter than imagined. When I got home in the evening, the children had just finished their baths, their 4 little faces flushed and exuding a milky fragrance. I kissed each of them one by one, feeling an unprecedented sense of fulfillment in my heart. "Madam," the nanny said softly, "Mr. Smith called to say he has a business engagement tonight and won't be coming home for dinner." I nodded, not at all surprised. Since the children were born, Lucas has trusted me more and given me more freedom. This respectful way of getting along actually makes me more comfortable than forced intimacy. The 4 children were playing under the care of a professional nanny. When they saw me come in, Luna and Linda reached out their hands, babbling and asking to be held. I picked up my 2 daughters and gently rocked them. The sunlight outside the window bathed us, warm and serene. In the afternoon, I visited the first physical store of the Happiness Mother and Baby brand. The store was spacious and bright, with warm and elegant decor, reflecting my pursuit of quality in every detail. "Chairman Emma," the store manager greeted me warmly. "In just 1 week since opening, our sales have already exceeded expectations by 3 times. I smiled as I inspected the store, occasionally picking up products to examine. This brand carries my love for my 4 children and embodies my philosophy as a mother. Back in the car, my phone rang again. It was Lucas. "Emma, I just got word. Charles Smith is in the hospital, dead." I gripped my phone tightly. "What happened?" "Alcohol poisoning combined with a stomach hemorrhage, and the rescue was unsuccessful." Lucas's voice sounded weary. "The police have investigated. It was indeed an accident." I remained Silent for a moment. Should we hold a funeral? No need, Lucas said coldly. He hasn't been part of the Smith family for a long time. Hanging up the phone, I looked out the window. Charles Smith died. Just like that, quietly in the hospital, without even a proper funeral. In my past life, he caused the death of me and my unborn child. In this life, he ended up alone and with nothing. The wheel of karma turns. Retribution never fails. In the evening, Lucas came back unusually early, holding a bottle of red wine. Have a drink. He shook the wine bottle. Let's celebrate. I raised an eyebrow. Celebrate what? New life. Lucas poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to me. Charles Smith is dead. Our child is growing up healthy. Our career is thriving. Isn't that worth celebrating? I took the glass and gently clinked it with his. It is. After 3 rounds of drinks, Lucas's gaze softened. Emma, thank you for giving me all of this. I smiled without saying a word. He would never know that my initial reason for marrying him was revenge, but now, I truly appreciate him for giving me a new life. By the way, Lucas suddenly said, I want to entrust more of the company's operations to you. You have a good business sense, much better than my old subordinates. I raised an eyebrow. Aren't you afraid I'll sideline you? Would you? Lucas retorted, a strange glimmer in his eyes. We looked at each other for a moment, then laughed simultaneously. He knows my abilities, and I understand his bottom line. This kind of tacit is stronger than love. All right, I raised my glass. Pleasure working with you. Late at night, I stood by the bedroom window, gazing at the Smith family estate under the moonlight. In my previous life, this place was my nightmare, but in this life, it has become my kingdom. For children, supreme power, abundant wealth. I have gained everything I ever wanted. I gently caressed my abdomen, where 4 little lives once grew, though it is now flat. It forever bears the mark of motherhood. Turning to look at Lucas sleeping soundly on the bed, a faint smile touched my lips. In this life, I have become the person I wanted to be, strong, independent, and inviolable. Revenge is complete, and so is life. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.